So we have just gone through and talked about each of the parts of the weighted average cost of capital equation. We've gone through and looked at economic profit, opportunity cost. We've looked at cost of capital. We've talked about it from a market perspective, a book perspective. We know that these are the weights, E divided by V, P divided by V, D divided by V are the percentages that each of those inputs represent in that company's capital structure, and that RE, RP, and RD are the costs of those capital. And we can look at them from a pure opportunity cost perspective in our best options, or we can look at them from a okay perspective if we don't have the best information available to us, which we sometimes don't. Or we can look at them from an inferior perspective, or we can just guess. Obviously, if we have the information, we want to use it, right? And sometimes we have to guess. Remember the first night when I told you that there were times you're going to have to make an assumption and back it up? You may not have all the information sometimes. Or, if you have it but you don't recognize it, rather than say, I'm done, it's over, I can't progress, make an assumption, back it up, and move forward with the assumption. If you make an assumption and you don't back it up, shame on you, I will not accept it. If you make an assumption and say, I'm going to assume 7%, and here's why, as long as the here's why isn't simply silly, then we're moving forward, and it's going to cost you nothing or almost nothing in terms of point production. Okay? Because frankly, that's what you're going to do in business. It's the way it is. All right. So, weighted average cost of capital. If these are all market components. Oh, by the way, let me talk about this last part. I apologize. We interact the percentage of the capital structure represented by debt times the opportunity cost of debt with 1 minus the tax rate on taxable income. Why do we do that? What is unique about the cost of debt that is not present with the cost of equity and the cost of preferred? The hint there is the tax structure. What is unique about it?
Write-offs.
You get to deduct it from taxable income. So our cost, our company's cost, is an after-tax cost, right? So when we interact it like this, we're actually giving ourselves an after-tax cost of opportunity cost of capital. Because we are going to pay taxes at some point. Why do we use the tax rate on taxable income instead of the tax rate on EBIT? We differentiated those two in another one last week. Why? Well, think about it. If there's debt, there's interest. EBIT isn't a complete variable any longer, is it? Now it needs to be taxable income, right? That's why. Okay. I said we will look at some numbers with this. We'll do that if we have time towards the end. I want to move on to look at evaluation and time value of money equations for a few minutes. Fair enough? Yep. Good. Kind of needs to be. Okay. What is the basic, most basic time value equation, present value equation? Do any of you know? I know some of you know this.
What is the what again?
The most basic form of the present value equation. The simplest form. You may be guessing what's on my mind, and I apologize if that's what I'm doing. Present value is equal to sum beta t divided by 1 plus r to the t. Did I talk about this at all last week? A little bit, didn't I? I thought so. Okay. And beta t is simply some benefit that we receive out here at time t, so it's in the future. And this t is not an operator, it's not a mathematical operator. It just helps us delineate when this happens, so it describes this number for us. Okay, it doesn't do anything. But the same t in the denominator, that's an exponent. It does something, right? R is our discount rate. Well, if we're thinking about something from the standpoint of the firm, and we own the firm, and it's the firm's capital that we're responsible for, the best R is WACC. If we're thinking about it from the standpoint of an investor, R might be our required rate of return. Our required rate of return should be our opportunity cost on that kind of capital if we're an investor, right? If we require a rate of return that's greater than we've been able to observe ever having gotten before, are we being realistic? No. If I'm Mickey, and I think my value is $250,000, but no one's ever paid me more than $50, am I being realistic? No, of course not. If I'm an investor that says I require a 30% rate of return, but I've never averaged more than about a 9, am I being realistic? No, I'm just not. So we have to have some reality here. You're going to see sometimes that we have these big spreads in what maybe Mazen, who wants to buy the company, thinks it's worth, versus what I think it's worth as I'm selling it, because sometimes one or the other is not realistic about R. If all other information is known in a perfectly competitive market, R is the only thing that's interpretive. And R sets up the difference between bid and ask. Okay? All right. Well, let's give an example of this. So, Josue, I'm desperate. I mean, brother, I am. I need some money today. I can pay you $1,000. And I can pay it to you in 2 years. What kind of interest rate are you going to charge me? I'm desperate. It's a signal that I may not be a good credit rating, right? What kind of interest rate are you going to charge me?
I don't know, I would probably just go and try to see what the average is for a loan.
27.
About the same plus premium.
Mazen's going straight to the payday lending companies. And actually 27 is nothing, right, compared to some of those. But I think he's probably more accurate. You're being a nice guy, you're being prudent because you're Josue, right? But the fact of the matter is, I'm desperate. I'm a lousy credit risk, okay? So let's say it's 27%. How much money would Josue be willing to loan me? Work the equation. You've got calculators. Do any of you, do you need to know how to do an exponent on this calculator, or do you already know? Does anybody need to know? Okay, nobody's saying yes.
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 Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm kind of literal about some of these things. Okay, so I love this calculator, by the way. There's got all kinds of stuff going on that none of us will ever use. So let's say I'm taking 1.27 is my number, and I want to square that. So 1.27, and I'm going to press the red key. That is one of the secondary keys, the red key. And then I'm going to find where we have the red y to the power of x, which is in the third row from the bottom, the far button on the right. So the red keys activate the red commands. The blue key activates the blue commands, and no key activates the white command. Okay? So 1.27 red, y to the x, and the x in this case is 2 equals. So I just did 1.27 squared. And as it turned out, it equaled 1.6129. So I'm going to store that number, because I don't want to type it in again. Okay? Why do I not want to type it in again, other than laziness, which I can be. Okay? I can be lazy. Why else might I not want to type the number in again once I calculate it? Accuracy. I have on my calculator at the moment, I have 4 digits of fidelity. What's the 5th digit? What's the 9th digit? You want to know how to change the number of digits?
Yes.
Okay. I figured that was coming because I see 3 of you. Okay. So I'm going to store that number for a second, and I'll tell you how I did that a little bit later on. If I want to change that number, which mine are always set to 4 decimals, always, okay, unless I'm doing something special, it's going to be the number of decimal places I like, red, display. Oops, excuse me, wrong order. Red, display the number. And so the red key and display down here, bottom row, second from the right, where it says in red, DISP. So red, display, and then the number I want. So red, display 8 gives me 8 decimals. Red, display 2 gives me 2 decimals. Red, display 4 gives me 4. Okay. By the way, online, listed for this week, I have 6 short videos of 8-10 minutes-ish each that do all the equations. I'm going to do 9 different numbers, but all the equations, and walk you through how to use some of the functions in the calculator. And there's all kinds of other YouTube-ish stuff out there that will walk you through this calculator as an example. My guys are better than I am. Okay? So I got it at 4. So again, I did 1.27 red y to the x 2 equals, and it gave me 1.61. Okay? Well, I said I want to store that number. And you'll see here, 4th row down, 2nd row from the left, in red it says STO, in white it says RCL, in red it says STO, that means store. So if I have a number on my display, 1.6129 at the moment, I want to store that somewhere, I can store it to key 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. Think of those as drawers in your calculator. Each one is unique from the other. Okay? And there's only 10 of them, 0 through 9. I'm going to store that to drawer number 2 because I squared it. That's just the way that I keep track of it. You don't have to do it like that, but that's how I'm going to do it. So I've got a number on my display, red STO, I've activated the storage function, 2. And now I stored it to drawer number 2. And I can check that by pressing the clear button, just C, clears the register, that's all it does. And then I can say RCL, recall, same button as store, just no activating the second. RCL2, and it brought the number back. It's magic. Okay? But it only brought back 1.6129, or did it? It brought back the whole number, regardless of what is showing. I could have this rounded to no decimal places, and it still keeps the whole number. And I don't remember how many decimals this stores. It's like the 50 or 80th decimal place. It's silly accurate, okay? Far more than we actually need. So that's how you easily use the exponent. There is actually a square key, but I always use the y to the x, so I can do the same function with square to the 3rd power, to the 8th power, to the 1/8 power, whatever it happens to be. Okay? All right, so now that I stored that, I'm now going to use my equation. So 1,000 divided by is right over here. And then I'm going to recall 1.6129 equals.
620.
And it tells me $620 and, well, $620. So, Josue, if he charged me 27%, if I knew that I was going to pay him $1,000 in 2 years, he would be willing to loan me $620 today. Easy as that. The present value of that $1,000 2 years from now at a 27% interest rate, discount rate, is $620. Does it make sense to you that it would be a lesser number?
Yeah.
Why? Lesser than the future number. Why does it make sense to you? I agree.
Because the interest is not part of the that's the much making on it, right? So
You're accruing interest.
Yes, I agree. So turn this around. If that's what we expect to make, then what we're saying is that kind of capital loses or changes value at that rate for us. That's your discount rate. Think of it as a proxy for your inflation rate. Now, that'd be a pretty horrible inflation rate, right? Okay. So, but that's a one-shot exchange. What if I tell you that I'm going to give you I want to know the present value today of a stream of cash flows in the future. So not just one, more than one. Well, that number then is the sum of whatever my beta t's are, divided by 1 plus r to the t. And if you have the summation sign here, the supposition is there's more than one of these terms. So let's say that in this case, I'm going to give $1,000 each year for 3 years. What's my interest rate this time? Not Josue, because not enough, and not Mazen, because I don't have any money left now. Robert, what interest rate are you going to offer to me? I'm not desperate anymore, we're now just doing business.
17%.
I'm doing business with somebody else. Manny, you know where I work. You can attach my paycheck if you need to. What interest rate you going to charge me?
9.99%.
Oh my gosh, you guys are brutal. Can I just say 9%?
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to do the 999s. Okay.
I work at Discover, so.
Okay, good enough. And Robert, you and Mazin, off my list. But that might be good news for you, by the way. I'm not going to hit you up for a loan. Okay? First year to the first power, right? Second year to the second power. Third year to the third power. Because that exponent has to follow the time frame. And I've said that these are years. If these were months, if it was 1,000 a month, then it would be 1 plus r to the t. But t would be measured in months, and r must be adjusted for months. If our interest rate was 12% annually, how much is it monthly? 1%. It's the whatever it is divided by the number of periods in a year. Because we tend to talk in annual rates, right? We might be able to calculate in periodic rates, but we talk annual. That's how we look at things. How contracts are stated that way almost always as well. Okay, so what's this equal? Well, if I'm doing this, I'm doing it one of two ways. Let's do it the hard way first. There's only 3 numbers. Wimp. Okay, 1.09. Do I need to calculate 1.09 to the first power?
No.
I should not need to do that. It's 1.09. What is 1.09 to the 0 power? 1. Any number to the 0 power is 1. Any number. Positive, negative, any number to the 0 power is 1. Okay? All right, so I'm going to do 1.09 red y to the x2 equals, happen to be 1.1881. I'm going to store that red STO2, I put it in the second drawer. And I just do that, if it's second power, I put it in the second drawer. Fifth power, I put it in the fifth drawer, just to make it easier for me to keep track. Okay? There's no magic to it, it's not necessary, it's just me. I take 1.09, red, y to the x3, excuse me, 1.1881, 1.09.
295.
So, red, y to the x, or 1.09, red, y to the x3 equals, and I got 1.295. And I'm going to store that red STO3, I put it in drawer number 3. Well, now I can go ahead and do some of my summation. About 1,000 for each of these. So I can clear, I just press the C. Don't do clear all, just do C. So 1,000 divided by 1.09. And here I will write it down. 917.43. And I'm truncating to the second decimal. And the second one, 1,000 divided by red, 1,000 divided by recall 2. 1.1881 is 841.68. And then 1,000 divided by 1.295 is 772.20. Now add them up.
$2,531.
What was it?
2,000.
Say it louder, please.
$2,531.29.
Okay. But I'm going to get $3,000 over those 3 years, or I'm going to pay it. But it's only worth $2,531 today because of that 9% discount rate. So this is a summation. If you can do this for 2 periods, you can do it for 1,000, right? Tedious though it may be, which is why we're grateful to have Excel. Okay? But if you can do it, you can do it. So I'm going to expect you to know how to do this. When we do an assessment, I promise you there will be something on that exam that will require this, and you're going to have to show me that you can do it manually, which is kind of mean-spirited of me, because I could do it with the time value function on the calculator as well. Think about this. In the time value equation, I have some present value, I have a beta t, I have r, and I have t, which really means I just have beta, right? Right? I also can think about a future value as well. Because in this singular equation, this item here, I called it beta t. But isn't that also a future value? Because it's the point in the future that we're adjudicating, right? Yeah, it's binary. Okay? In that case. So, let's say I borrowed this money, 9%. I paid my $1,000 each year. I borrowed $2,531.29. I paid my $1,000 each year. At the end of the third year, I've made my third payment, right? What's my future value on that loan? After you pay a loan off, what's its value? Zero, we're hoping, right? Otherwise something didn't work right. If I've made my payments on time and the bank still wants money from me, I'm mad, right? Zero. Okay? These are the 5 variables in the time value of money construction. Look at the top line of the calculator. We have, reading from left to right, we have n, and n is simply the number of periods of time. We have I divided by YR, which means interest per year. We have present value. We have payment. And we have future value. So the top line of your calculator has all the 5 elements of the time value calculation. But in order to use them, we have to have a particular condition that exists. The rate must be constant, because we can't put in a different rate for each period when we only have one input key for rate. So the rate must be constant. Well, that's okay for us. I mean, aren't loans almost always at a constant rate anymore? And if we're thinking about a rate of return on investment, we're probably going to project a constant rate. We know it's not going to be constant, we just don't know what it's going to be when, so we're going to take what we think the mean or the average is, and it's going to be constant. So let's do this same equation using the time value function of the calculator. There's an internal issue that we've got to deal with. In fact, there's 2 of them. Your calculator works off of a stack flow architecture. In this equation, if the left-hand side is positive, the right-hand side is positive, right? So positive can't equal anything but a positive, I think. I mean, I'm not very smart, but I can think that, okay? But not according to this. A positive equals a negative according to this. Because in your calculator, it thinks that if this is money out, it's going to be counteracted by money in. Or if this is money in, it's got to be balanced by money out. So when I think of this, if I'm making the loan, if I'm the one loaning money to someone, or I'm making the investment, that's money leaving me, and so I'm going to use a negative value for that. And it's going to return to me a number that is positive, because it's going to equal that which went out is equal to that which comes in. Has to be. I use that convention. If it's leaving me, it's negative. If it's coming to me, that's positive. I don't like giving away money, and I sure like getting it. That's how I remember it. Okay? So in this case, we're going to solve for present value. What was our payment? 1,000. So if you're the banker, you're the one giving the loan, you're going to get that. It's going to be 1,000, and it's positive. Okay. What's the rate?
9%. 0.09.
Is it? Yeah, and I kind of want to say 0.09, right, Mazen? Because we're a little bit mathematical, but in your calculator, it's in percentages. So it's going to be 9. And if it was 9 3/4%, it would be 9.75. Or however many decimals you want to carry it out. But it's not 0.0975. okay? It's in percentages, not decimals. What's the time?
3.
3. And what's the future value of this loan after the third payment was made?
3,000.
Happens to be 0 because it's been paid off.
0.
It's done. Okay? So there's one other part of this. Your calculator, because that stack flow architecture thing, it's got a funky little thing going on inside of it. It's going to try to think for you sometimes, and then it's going to make you think for it other times. For example, we don't put in 0.09, we put in 9 for the rate. And regardless of what the number of periods are per year, we still are going to use an annualized rate for that R, or I divided by YRP, regardless. So even if I've got 12 periods a year, I'm still going to give it an annual rate. If I have annual periods, I'm going to give it an annual rate. So I must have the ability to tell it how many periods per year, right? And I do. When you press the red and the C button, red C, which is clear all, you'll notice immediately it comes up and tells you something PYR. Mine says 2
12.
PYR.
Well,
That's telling you how many periods per year are programmed into it at that point. And if you clear all, it does not clear that. That's a permanent function of the register. You can change it, but clearing everything else does not clear that value. So literally every time I do a time value calculation, I re-input that value to make sure that I'm using the right number of periods per year. So we're going to use 1 period per year, 1 red, and directly under the payment key it says PYR, PYR. So 1 red PYR, and now hit clear all, and it'll tell you 1 PYR, right?
Yep.
Okay? First thing you have to do is tell how many periods a year we're looking at, because otherwise it doesn't know how to deal with this number of n, because this is not number of years. This is number of periods. And this is not the periodic rate, this is an annualized rate. When we're using annual periods, we're good. So if we're using monthly or daily or semi-annual, we got to think about it, right? Okay, so now let's run the calculation. You can put in your inputs in any order you like. We're putting in 4 inputs, and we're going to get the output. 1 equation, 1 unknown, and we can solve for it. So I'm going to go ahead and say 1,000. It's positive, so I'm going to get that. I'm a banker. PMT, 9, I divided by YR, 3 in 0 future value. I'm going to press the PV key, and magically it says $2,531.29. Actually, it's got a few more, but it was negative. Same number, okay? Because we did it right the first time. Same number. It's negative, balanced by the positives that I got. So if I was actually doing something just the opposite, if I was getting the loan, if I got a $2,531 loan, I would be making the $1,000 payments, in which case I would have put a negative here, and this would have become a positive. Okay? It's got to balance, not in the number, well, it also balances the number, but it in and out. Positive and negative balance each other out for this calculator. That makes sense? Can you replicate that? Let's look at something. Let's assume for a minute that we're thinking about investing in a business. It's going to give us cash flow. It's a rare business, by the way. It's going to give us a constant cash flow. That cash flow is going to be 50. And we expect to own that business for 60 years. And after which, at the end, we believe we can sell the business. We're just going to scrap the assets. It's a printing press and some trucks and such. After 60 years, it's not worth much of anything, right? They're pretty much dead by then. We're going to scrap them for metal, and we think we're going to get $1,000 for them. And we believe that we can get an average of 7% interest over that time. That's our opportunity cost of capital. What's going to be the present value of that future cash flow? which is $50 a year for 60 years plus a $1,000 at the very end. Well, let's work the numbers. It's all one period per year, so it's one red PYR, right? So 50, I'm going to get this cash flow, so it's positive. 7 is the rate. 60 is the number of years. 1,000 is the future value now. It's not 0 anymore. This isn't a loan that's been paid off. It still has that value. And that future value is at the exact same moment that the last payment is accounted for, by the way the calculator is doing it. So what's the value of this?
704.7.
Say it again?
719.22.
Yeah, that's what I got. So it gives me back 719.2164.22. So I would be, if I have a 7% discount rate, and I believe I'm going to get a $50 payment for each of the next 60 years, and then $1,000 at the end, the present value of that today, what I would be willing to pay for it today is $719.22. That's what it's worth to me at a 7% rate over a 60-year period. If this is a business and that's $500,000 and it's 60 years, and this is $1 million, I can still calculate, right? But again, I'm having a rarefied condition of my cash flow is constant. And in business, that's just not necessarily the way it goes. Sad but true, right? What if it's a mortgage? Can you calculate a mortgage payment? Some of you already own your own home, some of you would like to, right? So you got that $500,000 house out there you want to buy. You want to put 20% down, so you're going to borrow $400,000. It's a monthly payment on a mortgage, right? So we need to change the periods per year. 12 red PYR. So 12 periods per year for mortgage. And I know it's a $400,000 amount I'm going to borrow from the bank. So I'm going to get that money, right, from the bank. So it's positive. That's my present value. I know that I'm going to get, let's say, 4% interest, 4I divided by YR. It's a loan, so at the end of the loan, what's its balance? Zero future value, okay? And how many periods is a 30-year mortgage, 12 times a year? 360 periods, so N is 360. So N is the number of periods. What's my payment going to be? I told it future value, present value, I divided by YR and N. And it calculated for me a payment. So present value was 400,000. I divided by YR was 4%, thank you. Okay. N was 360. Future value is 0. And we just press the payment key, and it gives me a payment of negative $1,909.66. It's negative because it's an in and out flow. I've got to pay now to leave my pocket. That's bad. That's negative. I got to pay $1,909 and some pennies each month for 30 freaking years. And I'm happy when I close on the loan. Peter?
So the 400,000, that's positive because that's what came in, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to get from the bank.
And the payments that kind of are going out.
Exactly. Sometimes people confuse this to me because they think, well, wait a minute, I'm paying for the house. Well, you are, but you get the loan. That you then turn around and give it to the prior owner as a different transaction.
Yeah. Press 1.
Okay. So that's a bunch of these. So you got a few questions here. Ask me some questions. Or you can ask each other, but you might want to ask me.
I couldn't change the number of periods. Can you, how do you do it again?
Oh, so whatever you want the number to be, let's say it's 12, 12, red, and then PYR, which is top row, second from the right.
Okay.
Periods per year. And I always do red clear, that's clear all, and it tells me what my periods per year are when I do that. And so I didn't change it to whatever I need to change it to. Yeah.
I just don't know how to use storage.
Oh, you want to do the storage function
How
again?
we're doing it again.
Okay.
This
So,
PYR and all that.
let's assume that I got a number, guys. We need to have one conversation because I can't talk over you and help the other people, okay?
So what are we
I
doing
don't
now?
think they're even listening. I'm giving them caviar and, okay, now they're listening. All right. Okay, so I put a number in here, 1,909.66. Okay, I want to store that to the 9th drawer in my little chest of drawers here. So that's on my display. And I put it in, or I could have calculated it. It showed up on my display somehow. Red, and then the STO key, which is right under RCL. Red storage 9. So I just put it there. And you can't really tell that I put it there, right? Because it's just still on the screen. So just hit the C once, clear it, and then recall 9, and magically it reappears. I show you how to do that in those videos too. And there's some cheat sheets online. There's all kinds of stuff to learn about how to use this calculator well. Here's the best way to learn to use this calculator. Play with it.
Practice.
Play with it. Get creative. Think, if I could save 5% of my income, which is X dollars per month, for the next 25 years at a 7% rate of return, how much will I have when I retire in my retirement account? Play with it, okay? Spend some time, and that's going to really help you.
Do you have any like list of practice scenarios like that you can post for us? Just scenarios.
No, no. Just think about it. But what I want to do now is I want to kind of move off of a constant cash flow to a non-constant cash flow. Because is constant cash flow realistic in getting returns from a business? You're hoping to have a cash flow, right? Well enough knowing what it is and having it be constant. Well, remember, we've got the same equation running here. And at the moment, I'm going to use a fairly short period of time, because if you can do it for 2 periods, you can do it for 1,000 periods. Okay? Say we got 5 years. And we want to figure out the present value of an investment. Well, the present value is going to equal the present value of the time and rate discounted cash flows. So this is our business. And this is probably a relatively common business. We're going to move that over a little bit. Relatively common business in which in the first year we're going to lose $1,000. Okay? I think most businesses lose money to begin with. In the second year, we're going to break even. In the third year, we're going to make 500. In the fourth year, 1,000. In the fifth year, 10,000. And 10,000. And in the fifth year, we're going to then sell it for $50,000. Okay? That's what we think our cash flows are going to be. I separated what we're going to make in cash flow from what we sell it for, because those might be separable in an equation, and maybe not. All right? So let's say that I'm a proven investor. I've got a track record, but I don't know. And for some reason, I've got a 17% rate of Robert Ogden return. That was your number, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I've got 17% as my discount rate. And I can put together the equation. I'm going to take the sum of those, right? We're not actually going to run those numbers and calculate all of them. Because if you know math at all, you can find a number for each one of those terms and you can add them up. Shouldn't be rocket science, okay? But let's look at this last term. Why did I add the $10,000 in cash flow for that year to the liquidation or terminal value for that same year? And then divide those two numbers added up by 1 plus the discount rate for that year. Why did I do it that way? Why did I not do 10,000 divided by 1.17 to the fifth, plus 50,000 divided by 1.17 to the sixth.
I mean, the same year.
Pardon me, Ken?
Because it's the cash flow in the same year.
It's happening at the same point in time. These are not the number of cash flows. That's not what that exponent is. Those are the periods. They're happening at the same moment in time. Now, if I'd said, in the fifth year we got a cash flow of $10,000, and then in the sixth year we got bought out for 50, then I would have done it differently, right? Okay. Well, because these are non-constant cash flows, you can't use just the top line, because those are only constant cash flows. We're now going to use the CF key, which is the third row, middle key, CF, cash flow, okay? Non-constant. Okay, so we still have to think about periods per year. I want to change this back to annual. So 1 red PYR, okay, 1 period per year. And now I'm going to input the cash flows. But before you do that, this calculator starts at time 0. So the first cash flow you put in is the cash flow at time 0. And if I don't own the asset yet, and I'm just trying to find out the value that it might be worth to me, what am I getting in cash flow right now? 0, right? If I know what I'm going to pay for it, maybe that's a negative number that I'm giving. We'll come back to that in a minute, okay? But if I don't know, if I'm just trying to figure out what it's worth, then that's 0 at time 0. So now I can go ahead and put those cash flows in. I want to put in 1,000. Well, first I'm going to do 0 CFJ. So 0 times 0. And when you put it in, it tells you for what period it accepted 0. Okay? And then I say 1,000, but that 1,000 is positive, and I need to make it negative, right? Directly above the blue key is a little plus minus. It's a toggle switch, and whatever you have on the display, if you press that toggle switch, it changes it to the opposite sign. So I touched it, now it's a negative 1,000, and now I'm going to press CFJ. It accepted 1,000 at time 1, negative 1,000 at time 1. 0 CFJ, so to accept that for time 2. 500 CFJ for time 3. 1,000 CFJ for time 4. 60,000 CFJ for time 5. I could have said 10,000 plus 50,000 equals, then it would have brought up 60, and then I could have pressed CFJ. Same thing. I just did it in my head instead of on the display. Okay? So think of what I've told it. Every time I press the CFJ key, I tell it what the payment is, right? I'm satisfying the need to tell it the beta or the payment. Every time I press the CFJ key, starting from 0, I'm incrementing the time, the periods. I've told it the number of periods I've satisfied T or N. If I don't tell it anything past period 5, it sees nothing past period 5. And after all of this has happened, nothing's left, right? Future value is 0. It doesn't understand future value in this case because it's 0, so we don't even put in 0. But we've satisfied the condition. What we haven't satisfied yet is I divided by YR. So we have to give that a number. And we're, in this case, 17, I divided by YR. Just like we used over here. So we've satisfied payment, rate, time. We've inferred future value, right? Because we didn't tell it anything, so I knew it was 0. And now we can solve, but it's not with a present value key. It's the net present value key, which is second row, second key from the right in red. So if I want to know what my net present value is, red NPV, and it tells me equals 27,357.80. Be able to follow that? It's okay, we're going to do it again. We'll do it again, okay? Because almost no one gets it right the first time. All right, so let's go ahead and clear the whole thing. Red C, we cleared the register.
are we still 12 period? 12 per,
We're one period per
One
year,
period.
because this is annual, and that might be why I gave you a bad number. In fact, that's the most common mistake of not having adjusted your periods per year. This is annual, okay? So one red PYR. Okay?
Yep.
So let's just go ahead and start. We're going to say 0, CFJ 0. 1,000, and we're going to toggle that so it's negative. CFJ, and accepted it for time 1. 0, CFJ, and accepted it for time 2. 500, CFJ, and accepted it for 3. 1,000, CFJ, and accepted it for 4. And then 60,000, CFJ, and accepted it for 5. So I've told it payments and periods. It infers future value at 0 because I haven't told it anything past year 5, so the future is 0, right, if it's nothing. And now I'm going to say 17 I divided by YR, or rate. So now I've given it 4 variables, and it's going to solve for the unknown, which is the present value, or in this case the net present value, red NPV. Red net present value, NPV, 27,357.8. And it's positive.
What does NPV stand for again?
PV or NPV?
NPV.
Net present value. Which I'm going to talk about more in a moment, Tavita, because it doesn't, I don't know what the net is yet, do you? I don't know what the net is. But what we just said is if you believe an asset's going to give you a cash flow, nothing now is going to give you, it may cost you something, it's going to require $1,000 in a year, it's going to give you nothing in 2 years, 500 the next, 1,000 the next, and then you're going to be a happy day as it gives you $60,000. You have a 17% discount rate. The present value of that future cash flow discounted for your rate and the specified time is $27,357. Okay. How many of you are able to know enough about net present value to discuss it intelligently? Come on, I taught a few of you. Okay, so let's think about what net present value means. The present value of something is the sum of the benefits it's going to give you divided by 1 plus R to the T. The net present value is going to be the sum of what it gives you divided by 1 plus R to the T minus the sum of what it costs you divided by 1 plus R to the T. So the present value of the benefits minus the present value of the costs. That makes sense, right? Is going to give you a net present value. Benefit minus cost net. So we're going to use these numbers here to find the net present value of this scenario. So Tavita, we've said that the present value, based on these cash flows and a 17% discount rate, is $27,357.80. Let's use that in the negative as our cost function. Negative 27,357, excuse me. Negative 27,357.8. And we want to find the net present value. Okay? So clear your register. Red clear. Because you can't go back in and just insert numbers into the cash flow register. You've got to start over again. It's annoying sometimes when you give the wrong number. Okay? So in this case, 27,357.8, and I'm going to toggle it to a negative, CFJ, and it accepted that at time 0. So think about this is the price we're paying today to get these future cash flows, tomorrow and beyond. Okay? So I put that at time 0, so 1,000, toggle it again to the negative, CFJ, 0 CFJ, 500 CFJ, 60,000 CFJ. Whoops, I did something wrong.
You skip
27,
one,
357, did I miss one?
1,000.
Okay, thank you. There we go. So I've given all the cash flows. 17 is still my rate. And then I'm going to press red net present value. What is it?
0.
0. Wait a minute. How is that? How is it 0? Well, actually, I would think, how is it not 0? If the present value of 27,357, which is present because it's times 0, right? If that's what we calculated as the value of these future cash flows, then the present value of the cost equaled the present value of the benefits at a 17% rate for this period of time. So now we have to think about net present value in a slightly different relationship. Present value is what it is worth to us in today's dollars based upon its cash flows and our rate and the time that we're considering. If we pay exactly what it's worth, what do we have left? 0. Doesn't mean we didn't make any money. We made our rate. We got our 17%, but we got no more and no less. So if net present value, when net present value is equal to 0, it means we got our expected discount rate as a rate of return. When it is greater than 0 and less than 0, we have to think about what that means. So let's do those numbers real quick, and then I'm just going to give you some basic construction in some kind of an abstract way, and then we're going to be done. Fair enough? Okay. So how would this become greater than 0? Well, it would become greater than 0 if we paid less than its present value, right? So let's assume for a moment that instead of paying 27,000 something, what if we negotiated well and only paid 25,000?
Yeah, 2,000 something.
Okay? So let's run that number. So I read clear, 25,000.
Still negative, right? Yeah.
Still negative, because I'm still paying it, right? Right. Okay? CFJ. 1,000, negative, CFJ. 0, CFJ. 500, CFJ. 1,000, CFJ. 60,000, CFJ. Oops, I'm skipping a digit again somewhere. I apologize. Okay, so I gave it, it's got all 5 of them now. 17, I divided by YR, red net present value, and it happened to give me $2,357.80. Well, without even thinking very hard, does that surprise you? If the present value of this future cash flows that came in the future were $27,357.8, and we paid $25,000, what's the difference between the present value and what we paid? It's the net present value. Okay? So if you know those numbers, you can figure out the net present value. That's not the hard. What's harder is to figure out what it means to you. So Ken, if you have a discount rate of 17%, get these cash flows over these periods of time, and only had to pay $25,000 for it, you'd end up with this net present value of $2,357. How much did you make?
2,857.
You know, I think you made a lot more than that. You made 17% on this 25,000, plus you made 2,357. Because when net present value is greater than 0, you received more than your discount rate. If I put this number at 30,000, we would have ended up with a negative value here, right? Because 30,000 is greater than 27,357. It would have been a negative net present value, which simply means we made less than our discount rate. So when net present value is greater than 0, we made more than our expected discount rate. When it equals 0, we made exactly our discount rate. When it's less than 0, we made less than our discount rate. So let's make an assumption for a minute. If this came out with a negative net present value of 1,000, Chris, you're a pretty pragmatic guy, right? You're a savvy investor. You're looking for 17% interest on $27,000, $28,000, $30,000. If over a 5-year period you had a net present value of a negative 1,000, would you still consider that investment? Didn't mean that you lost 1,000. It means you made 1,000 less than 17%, which probably is 15-something%. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, because you're beating inflation.
Well, you beating inflation, you may have beaten your realistic expectations, or maybe it's just the best option you've got available to you. Maybe you don't have other investment vehicles that you think you're going to improve upon. So when the net present value is negative, it doesn't mean you don't always do it. It means you're not going to get your discount rate. If you are hard and fast in the receipt of that discount rate, and no ifs, ands, or buts, you must have that, then a negative net present value says walk away. Positive net present value says bring it on, right? And a 0 net present value doesn't mean you didn't make any money. It means you made exactly the amount of money you expected or the rate you expected. It's going to take you a while to digest all that, by the way. I know that. We're going to play this exact same game with different numbers next week. And you're going to do it in some other mechanisms between now and then. Walter?
So just thinking through this, the 17% interest rate, that's money coming in.
Well, don't think of it as money coming in. Think of it as just your rate.
Your rate. So you could inverse that and say if you have a mortgage or a loan, 17% money going out, it would be negative 17.
Yeah, I don't want you to start applying positives and negatives to the rate.
Okay.
I know what you're doing and I get it.
Yeah.
Stop it. It's not going to serve you well over time. I know Walter well enough to say, knock it off, bro. Because it's not going to serve you well over time. Positive and negative to the value, that's something that we can internalize with the tool we're talking about. To the rate, don't do it. It's going to mess with your head.
Yeah.
Okay? Think about money out as bad, money in is good, out is negative, in is positive. Okay? But don't think about the other with the rate, because the rate that you pay, if you're paying me, is the rate that I get. So it's positive to me, negative to you. It's the same rate, it's just the rate.
It's that
Okay.
paradigm.
Yeah, that's why I described cost and reward and return to the same number. Why I use them interchangeably, because it just depends on what perspective you're looking at. Okay, are you exhausted yet? Okay. Elisa?
So when we're doing these models, are we looking at it from an investor's perspective or seller's?
Good question. If you're thinking about buying the company, you're an investor, right? If you're thinking about selling the company, you want to know what an investor would pay. So your cost, your investment in the asset's always going to be negative, so you get a positive. Okay? Okay, so let's just breathe deep for a second, and we're going to look at something else. It's just conceptual, and we're just going to have that for
Change it and recover. Is that this one? This is display.
What I won't have gotten to tonight, by the way, is showing you how to do any of this in Excel. We'll get there. You don't need to be able to do it in Excel to do the problem set. You don't need to do it in Excel to be able to do the practice homework or the homework. In fact, remember that largely the problem set, the practice homework, and the homework will harken back to mostly the week before and only a little bit of this week, and not the most sophisticated things from this week. Okay? All right. So we're going to just generalize the valuation estimator or valuation equation. We're going to say value, which when we're trying to figure out the value of something, we're trying to calculate the present value of it. So the present value is going to be equal to the present value of some discounted cash flows plus the present value of some continuing value. So the value of an asset, or its present value, is the present value of its discounted cash flows during an explicit period plus the present value of its continuing value, which is going to be its continuation period, sometimes referred to as its terminal value, and it's going to represent perpetuity for the company's cash flow. Put something sharp in my eyes now. Okay? Let's think about this continuing value for a minute. I will tell you that a continuing value, which is simply a present value at a future moment in time, or a moment in time, right? A continuing value is going to be the same as a generic present value. It's going to be the sum of the cash flows for times t divided by 1 plus r to the t, right? But there's an infinite number of them because this is the value of this company as it lives on in perpetuity. Do I know how long my company's going to live? No. Oh, I might. There are some situations which I might, right? But by and large, no. We believe the corporate asset will live on forever. And it may live on inside of somebody else's company as it got purchased into it. It may live on in a trash heap, but it doesn't disappear. It might get disaggregated, but it still is there. The atoms are still atoms. I don't understand black holes yet, so the atoms can still be atoms. Okay? So this is a perpetuity. So I got a problem. I don't know how to add up an infinite series of values. Because every time I think I'm done, Ken comes in and says, oh, Red, I forgot this one. Okay? So I need something that helps me. This equation really is the cash flow at time 1 divided by 1 plus r to the first plus the cash flow at time 2 divided by 1 plus r to the second plus the cash flow at time perpetual divided by 1 plus r to the perpetual, right? That's what it is. And if I believe that this cash flow is going to grow at a constant rate, then it's the cash flow at time 1 is to the power of 1. But the cash flow at time 2 is to the power of 2. And 3 and so on, based upon its rate. Or actually, excuse me, times 1 plus times 1 plus r to the 0, right? Or 1 plus the growth rate of the cash flow to the 0. So I'm thinking about the growth rate of this cash flow. In the first year, it's going to be times 1 plus the growth rate, whatever that is, to the power of 0, so it's times 1, so it didn't change, right? And if I think that it's going to grow that same rate next year, it's times 1 plus whatever the g was to the first, and so on, second, third, fourth, and keeps going. Notice how these are offset by 1 period. Okay? Well, if I have a constant rate of growth of this, and a constant rate here, and a constantly changing time variable, I can rewrite this equation in an oh-so-simple fashion. The cash flow at time 1 divided by R minus G. It's the same doggone equation. And if you really want the algebraic proof, I've got it online for you. And if you spend time watching that, I'm going to buy you a life. Okay? This is the continuing value at some time 0 is equal to the cash flow at time 1 divided by R minus G. Do you recognize that equation?
It's for the future cash flow.
It's the discount yield, or the dividend yield, or the dividend growth equation. Because value is simply a price, cash flow, and dividend, same kind of thing. Discount rate, growth and growth. It's the same equation. You know the equation. This is just an extraordinarily general form of it that's used in finance books, which actually is more specific, because this is specific to common stock, where we've just generalized the entire asset. Okay? So, that said, the continuing value at time 0, which is about to confuse you, is going to be the cash flow at time 1 divided by R minus G. And the present value of the continuing value is going to be the continuing value divided by 1 plus R to the T. Because remember, we're going to take the present value of the discounted cash flow for an explicit period, and I'll explain that in a moment, plus the present value of the continuing value. Because this continuing value, we're going to calculate at a point in time for after our explicit period. So let's talk about our explicit period. Kuhn, is it likely that you and I, we're reasonably bright people, you're really smart, I can actually light a candle, okay, together we're reasonably bright, right? Is it likely that we can figure out with some accuracy the cash flow of our company tomorrow? Say yes. Because if we know about the company, we should have some reasonable understanding of what's coming in tomorrow, literally tomorrow, the next day. Yeah. Is it reasonable that we can probably give a good estimation of our cash flows for the next 5 months? Yeah. Year?
Yeah.
3 years? Yeah, yeah. Oh, further we step out on that limb, the shakier it gets. 17 years? Oh, please. Right? You're in La La Land. Wake up. Okay? 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. The further you go out, the less confident we become, the more defensive you should be at your estimations, right? Is anyone ever disappointed or bothered when your estimates, when your realities are better than your estimates? Does it ever bother you to make more than you thought you were going to make?
Absolutely.
Nope. Does it ever bother you to make less? Yeah, baby. Okay, so estimate lower if you're out on the edge of the limb. Okay? Well, I can explicitly, I can explicitly forecast for a reasonable period of time. Apparently the amount of time my voice does okay is about 3 hours and 10 minutes. I explicitly forecast for a reasonable period of time. I go beyond the reasonable period of time, I better just kind of get very general about it because I know I'm guessing. So I might think about at time 0 through whatever I've got. Want another color? There it is. I might think time 0, time 1, time 2, time 3, time 4, time 5. And I might consider the revenues I think I'll bring in, because I've forecast my revenues for those periods. I can think about my expenses during those periods, and I can forecast some notion of cash flow, right? But after about year 5, and I know I'm on shaky ground, so I'm going to start my time sequence over again at year 1, which actually is year 6. In actual years, right? But it's the first year of my continuation period. So here's my continuation, and here's my explicit. And our explicit period might be 1 year, might be 6 months, it might be 7 years, it might be 3 years. There's nothing magical about 5. You're going to see me use 5 a lot. It's only coincidental. I use 3 a fair amount. It's only coincidental. It is whatever you can credibly believe it is based upon you and your best financial minds trying to figure it out. Well, if this is year 1 in the continuation, that's year 0 in the continuation, right? The last year of my explicit period is year 0 in my continuation period. So if I used this kind of an equation, year 0, it's telling me at this moment in time what these future cash flows are going to be worth. I'm going to add that to what these future cash flows are worth once I've discounted that number like this. The present value of the discounted cash flow, is equal to the sum of those cash flows times I divided by 1 plus R to the T during the explicit period. And then I've looked at my cash flows. Maybe they grew at a constant rate. Maybe they changed to a non-constant rate. But I'm going to apply a constant rate out here in my continuation, and it's going to be a kind of vanilla rate, right? It's going to be a white bread rate. Because if I do anything other, because it's a perpetuity number, this thing's going to look like a hockey stick going up in terms of its growth, which we know isn't realistic. And now you know everything about valuations. The reality is, almost everything else we're going to do is simply going to be this. It's just going to look different. Okay. The value of an asset today is its present value, which is the sum of its future cash flows discounted for rate and time. We can separate those future cash flows. Some of them come during an explicit forecast period that we've said, okay, I'm going to have these revenues, those expenses next year. Next year it's going to be like this. Next year it's going to be like this. The next year, I don't know, I'm going to stop there. Okay? So an explicit period, and then plus the present value of all the future expected cash flows at a constant rate of growth, and all of these numbers here will share the same discount rate. We never change the discount rate. We'll talk next week about why that is. This is a lot of stuff, isn't it? You're okay. You're going to do just fine with it. I promise you. Okay? Any questions? This video will post online sometime tomorrow morning or by midday. The practice homework. There's a problem set that let me give you. Oh, I have to give you 3. I'm just going to let you pick them up as you walk out. So the first item is your problem set using CAPM and WAC. The next problem is a quick sheet with the various evaluation models on it. And the next item is a quick sheet with the time value money equations on it. Now what I didn't do, let me look at this for just a minute. What I didn't do, and I should have, is I didn't